I ran the supply line up to Endel Voss's cabin every 10 days, rain or snowfall, because he was the last soul on the mountain who hadn't the sense to move down before the passes closed. Flour, oil, tallow, the odd letter nobody else would carry that far. He always met me at the tree line with the same flat nod, like the 10 days between my visits were nothing, like time didn't apply to him anymore. I never asked why a man built like a felled trunk chose to spend his last years alone at the top of the world. You learn not to, in that country. Men come up the high passes to get away from something, and the mountain is generous enough not to ask what. I'd known him 3 years by then, in the way you know a man you see for 20 minutes every 10 days, and otherwise not at all. He'd fought somewhere once, in some war with a name he never gave me, and he carried the particular stillness of a man who had already seen the worst version of most situations and stopped being surprised by the rest. I liked him for it. I trusted the quiet more than I would have trusted talk. The morning I found the child, the nod didn't come. Endel was standing in the doorway instead, filling it, and behind him I could see something small folded into the shadows of the room, gray-skinned, silver-haired, knees drawn up under a coat 3 sizes too big. "Wreck came down past the second ridge," he said, before I could ask. 10 days ago. I went to see if there was anyone left to bury. There was her instead. Her name, when she finally gave it, sounded like 2 stones knocked together. Ashan. She didn't cry, she didn't do anything I expected a lost child to do. She watched me the way you watch weather that hasn't decided what it's going to be yet. And when I set my pack down too near her, she reached out and moved it. Not pushed, not shoved. Moved. It 6 feet, like it weighed nothing at all, like the ice and the snow and the whole unbearable weight of that mountain simply didn't apply to her small gray hands. I looked at Endel. He looked back at me, with the particular calm of a man who had already had this conversation with himself and settled it. "Her kind Carrie," he said. "Whatever that means where she's from doesn't ask to be strong, just is." I told myself I'd only stay the 1 night. I stayed 4, because something about the 2 of them, the old soldier and the small alien girl who could lift what he couldn't, had the shape of a thing I didn't want to walk away from yet. The second night, a beam had come loose over the woodshed, half collapsed under old snow weight, and Endel was working at it with a pry bar and a curse for every failed inch. Ashan watched him from the doorway for a long while, the way she watched everything, weighing it before she moved. Then she crossed the yard, set both small gray hands under the beam, and lifted it clear off its footing, while Endel stood there with the pry bar still in his fists, doing nothing. She didn't strain. She didn't even seem to notice she'd done anything unusual. She set the beam down where he pointed and went back to the doorway to keep watching, like the whole exchange had cost her nothing at all. Neither of us said anything about it that night. Some things you let sit a while before you find the words for them. Ashan warmed to the fire before she warmed to either of us, but by the 3rd night she was sitting against Endel's leg, like she'd done it her whole life, and by the 4th, she'd started handing me kindling before I asked for it, watching my face after each piece, like she was learning what a good decision looked like on someone. She had a habit of testing her strength on small things when she thought no one was looking, lifting a stool with one hand, closing her grip slow around a stone until it cracked, then setting the pieces down very carefully, almost apologetically, as if she understood before either of us explained it to her, that what her body could do and what the world would let her do were 2 very different measures. Endel caught her at it once and didn't scold her. He only said, low, mostly to himself, not her fault what she was built for. I didn't understand then how much weight was sitting behind that sentence. I understood it later, on the mountain, when it was too late to matter. I should have known peace like that doesn't survive a mountain pass. Nothing does, up there. They came on the 5th day, 3 men and a woman, down-country accents scraped thin by the cold, asking polite questions about wreckage and cargo manifests at the trading post 2 valleys over. I was there buying rope when they asked it, and I watched the postmaster's face go carefully blank in the way people's faces go blank when they've decided not to know something. The woman had a manifest folder under her arm, official looking, with a stamp on it I didn't recognize and didn't want to. She used the word unit twice, describing what they were looking for, and never once used the word child. Word travels faster than snow melts, even in that country. By the time I made it back up to warn him, they were already a day behind me on the same trail, moving slower than I had, but moving with the particular patience of people who are paid whether the job takes 1 day or 10. Endel didn't look surprised. I think some part of him had been waiting for that knock since the morning he carried Ashan in from the wreck. They don't want her for spite, he told me, checking the door bar, the shutters, the things a man checks when he's run out of better options. They want what she can lift, what she can carry. There's markets for a pair of hands like hers. Mines, quarries, cargo holds too tight for machines. She's not a person to them, she's a rated capacity. Then we run, I said. You run, he said. With her. I'll buy the daylight you need. I want to say I argued longer than I did. I want to say I found some clever third option that didn't end with an old man alone in a doorway. I didn't. The mountain doesn't hand out clever options. It hands out the ones you can survive. And Endel had already decided which one of us needed to. He knelt down to Ashan's height, not to ask anything of her, just to be level with her one more time, and told her to go with me, and to keep her hands to herself unless she had no other choice. She didn't understand all of it. She understood enough. Her fingers found the sleeve of my coat and stayed there. What happened at the cabin, I only know from the sound of it, carried up the ridge on cold air that carries everything too well. I know Endel Voss did not go quietly, and I know that whatever those 3 men had planned for a small gray child with unnatural strength, they did not plan on a man who'd spent his whole life learning how to make a doorway impossible to pass. I know the shooting stopped before it should have, and that the silence after was worse than the noise. I did not go back to see. I have thought about that every day since, and I have never once decided it was the wrong choice. Ashan needed the daylight more than I needed the truth. We walked 2 days to the lower valley, the 2 of us. Her hand fisted so tight in my sleeve, I had to cut the seam free that night to sleep. She didn't cry then either. Whatever grief looks like where she's from, it isn't tears, it's stillness, a kind of stone quiet that sits in a small body and doesn't ask to be comforted. I let her carry the pack once we were clear, because she wanted something to hold, and because I understood, by then, that letting her be useful was its own kind of kindness. I never told anyone what those hands of hers could do, not the full truth of it. Some things aren't safe to be known for. I found her a place with people who'd ask fewer questions than I would have liked, and fewer still than she deserved. But she was safe there, and safety was the only inheritance Endel Voss had left to give her. I still run the supply route, though there's no cabin left to run it to. I stop at the tree line anyway, out of habit, or maybe out of respect, and I look up toward where the door used to be. I think about a man who spent his whole life alone on a mountain, so that when the moment finally came for him to matter, there'd be no one standing behind him he'd have to ask permission from. Ashan is grown now, by whatever measure her people grow. She still doesn't cry, but every year, on the day the wreck came down, she asks me to tell it again, the whole of it, slow, the way I've told it here. And every year I do, because some debts you don't pay off by forgetting them. You pay them by remembering exactly how they were bought, and by whom, and at what price, on a mountain that never once asked to be forgiven for what it cost him.